Now, welcome back. We are going to continue with Equine Matters. Dr. Sarah Jane Cullen, good morning.
Hi.
Dr. Ciara LOSTY, good morning.
Hi, Damien.
You're both WIT lecturers in the Department of Sport and Exercise Science, and you're researching currently jockeys and jockey research in Ireland. Sarah Jane, tell me first about this research.
Well, it probably started back in 2005 with Dr. Giles Warrington and Dr. Adrian McGoldrick, and the research programme has built since then. So at the moment, we're delivering kind of all the research out of WIT. So we have 3 PhD students kind of there for 4 years each on funded PhD programmes. So we work in conjunction with UL and kind of the horse racing bodies like IHRB, Irish Injured Jockeys, HRI. So we're looking at mental health, looking at bone health, and looking at kind of the physical training that jockeys are doing.
Ciara, you're doing the on-the-ground research with the jockeys and I suppose dealing and talking to them. What have you found out so far?
So we actually have a current PhD student who's looking at mental health disorders in actual jockeys, and he's found that 29% of jockeys that he surveyed present with one mental health disorder. And there's a high prevalence of depression or symptomology of depression within the jockey community as well, and they would probably be a little bit more susceptible than other elite athletes as well. So that kind of informs a lot of my applied practices as well, that there are a lot of mental health issues on the ground.
And is it too easy to say at this stage why?
I think it's a really unique sport in that there's a high psychological and physiological demand on them. Making weight is also a big issue. So there's a really complex interplay between making weight and kind of the psychological effects of that, and obviously the physiological effects of that. But that affects people's mood. It affects obviously their bone health. Sarah Jane will tell you more about that. But it's quite a complex sport that way. And the demands and the actual lifestyle of the sport, in that they're riding out in the morning and then could be racing again in the afternoon.
I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. It's incredibly demanding.
And then every time they get up on the horse and they're racing and they're jumping, they think this could be the day that my career might end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a real... What have you found so far, Sarah Jane?
We often say that about the jockeys. It's not like that you go out and play a match and you have a friendly. Like every race that they go out and ride in, they have these pressures, not just from trainers and owners, but like the social media pressure. All the eyes are on them. So each race is so important. So there are those like pressures on them, aren't there?
Yeah, and I think it's about balance. Like really for the jockeys, it's balancing the risk with the reward. And really sometimes if the risks outweigh the rewards, that they're kind of susceptible to mental health issues. But it's probably the only sport where you lose 98% of the time. It's, if you're a junior B hurling, you'd have probably more success than that as well. So it's managing. True. And it's also, again, it's quite a high masculine kind of macho type sport as well. It's even though it is males and females compete as equals.
I was going to talk about that next, in terms of there are more women doing it now. Have you found so far a different way that they're dealing with mental health issues, Sarah Jane, or do the same things apply?
Well, we don't have, the females are coming through, and it's more probably because of the weights. They can make the weights easier. So I suppose a lot of the research we've done has been predominantly focused on males, because it's very hard, to just focus on one or two.
Of course.
In terms of case studies, Ciara, you'll probably be in terms of
and I work with a lot of the female jockeys as well. I suppose it's just, they're still humans, they're still athletes, they still present with the same issues that maybe the males do as well. I would say in general, but sport is a microcosm of a wider society. The females are a little bit more open to engaging with support services, and particularly psychological support services.
What are you hoping to do with this research, Sarah Jane?
So I suppose the research we're doing at the moment is trying to inform the services that jockeys are getting. So at the moment, Horse Racing Ireland fund kind of a jockey pathway that they deliver free services to jockeys. So we have like an S&C coach, Wayne Middleton, we have Ciara as the sports psych, and Gillian O'Loughlin as a dietitian. And they are free services. They're available for all professional jockeys in Ireland. So I suppose we're trying to give them the best kind of evidence-based sport-specific support. So all our research is directly informing, say, what type of training you should be doing. We have a bone health study looking at what should they be doing to improve their bone health, what type of strategies, taking supplements, doing certain type of exercise. So all our research is trying to basically make the work that we're doing on the ground kind of more evidence-based and specific to them as the athletes they are.
In terms of the mental health issues, Ciara, suicide, is there a higher proportion or percentage Have you found anything yet regarding jockeys?
Oh, we haven't found that in relation to jockeys, but they do have a higher percentage of mental health issues in comparison to other.
Are they able to talk about these things? Again, we'll be talking to some jockeys later in the week about this. Do they, because of that culture, you say, that locker room culture, have they managed in general to deal with this, or are there serious problems?
There are a lot of issues on the ground, but it's providing a cultural change and a cultural shift for the jockey community to really engage in all sports science support services and really engage in and thinking like a professional athlete. So sports psychology can give you a little bit of an edge maybe over another athlete, and it can also give you a space to deal with your own identity issues, transition, injuries, preparing for competition, dealing with the weight issues, all of those things. So again, we're trying to really change the culture in relation to them and really been proactively trying to get them engaged in all of the services, not just the psychology services.
There's also, for people that don't know, Sarah Jane, there is in the jockey world there's freelance jockeys, those that are not tied to stables, and then you have those that have a contract with the stable. So there's obviously a lot of varieties within the jockey world of how those issues can play out.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of our work has, I suppose, in recent years been focusing on the professionals that sometimes, would be more linked to a yard. But we have done work with the qualified riders as well, and we're seeing, there are symptoms there for everybody. But I think we need to do more work with the wider community. But at the end of the day, the pressures are the same. They're going out to ride. They're getting paid for a ride. If they win, they get extra money. So the pressures are still there. There's still weights that everybody has to make. That the guys are just finding it so hard to make those weights at the moment.
It's a really tough life.
It is a really tough life, yeah. And there will be high levels of burnout as well. And I think once there are kind of risk for higher levels of burnout, there's risk for maybe maladaptive coping strategies like use of alcohol. There's been some positive drug tests in the community as well. So it is a high risk, high rewards type sport.
And we only see, we'll watch Cheltenham from today, and you'll see the elite, and you'll see those, and they're normal guys and girls on the face of it, and yet underneath it there's these issues that I presume develop at certain ways. And are there support services there for jockeys?
Yes, so in the jockey pathway, all licensed jockeys have access to the services that we're talking about. So whether it's dietitian, whether it's strength and conditioning, and psychological services. There's also kind of they have a chief medical officer as well, so they have full medical support as well.
Do they use them?
Yes, they do. It's growing. But it's still, again, that's part of our work, is really getting opportunities like today even to promote it and talk about it and actually engage with the community as well to use the services that are there and that are actually available for them.
If any jockeys want to text us in, please do, or give us a shout. We're going to try and interview a couple later in the week. How long is this research going to go on for, Sarah Jane?
As long as possible. As long as we keep getting funding in to support it. I suppose we have one student finishing up at the end of this year, so we want to kind of see where we're going to next. Where do we need to explore further? So yeah, as long as possible. We need to get the weights kind of raised. They're just too low for the jockeys. As in flat jockeys, the minimum weight is 52.7 kilograms, including their riding kit. So for a grown man or woman, that's a low weight. And the newer guys have to ride even less than that because they have a claim kind of as an incentive for trainers to give them rides. So we need more research to support that, to get them raised. That's
skin and bones. Yeah. That's drinking water for breakfast, not having a breakfast, maybe one slice of... That's horrendous.
Yeah, and they go through this cycle. You might find out, say, 24 to 48 hours beforehand if you even have a ride and what weight you'll be racing at. So you might be eating normally and then you just stop and then you try cut the weight to get down to that in that, say, 48 hours beforehand, and then you might have a meal again. And so it's this constant cycling. So we need more research to support that, not just nationally, internationally, that weights are raised.
You might come back to us later in the year and talk about any other developments on it. That'd be good to do that. And it's great to see it being done in WIT. And what's the name of your student that's heading off in the summer? Do you want to give him a mention, him or her?
Oh, to finishing up. Yeah, Michael Kiley will be finishing up at the end of this year.
Michael. He's probably listening to this morning. Dr. Sarah Jane Cullen, thank you so much for coming into us. Dr. Ciara Losty, thank you very much. As I said, you're WIT lecturers in the Department of Sport and Exercise Science, and it's a really, really good department. So well done and continued success in your research.
Thank you.
Thank you, Damien.